I realize this is California, but I don't know of anybody who smokes their pets. You will get diarrhea. That's what they told us in the orientation. We were being sent to China by a parachurch organization, and we were going to teach English for a semester. And a lot of things were going to be different. It was the mid-1980s. It was kind of right at the beginning of modernization. They gave us a lot of advice and instruction at the orientation, and I remembered a lot of it, but the thing I remember the most was that I was going to get diarrhea. They said, it's not a matter of if, but when. So I promised myself I was not going to get diarrhea. I was going to boil all the water. I was going to not eat anything from a street vendor. I was going to only eat what our cook made for us. I was determined. I was only going to brush my teeth with boiled water. I was not going to get diarrhea. After our orientation, we did take off, and after a long flight, we landed in Chengdu, which is in Sichuan province. And because we were in Sichuan province, the food did tend to be spicy. And I'm a Midwesterner, and spicy food is not always the best thing for my digestion. We had a special cook. He was supposed to know about American cooking, and he was from China, had never been to America, but he was our cook, and I think sometimes things had gotten lost in translation. We tried to describe a hamburger once, and he gave us some kind of a dumpling, kind of stuffed with ground beef and, and spices. There was a guy on our team named Greg, and he was from the South, and he loved spicy food. So he became my unofficial taste tester. If he liked it, I knew I would probably have a little bit of trouble. And if he thought it was too bland, well, I knew it was for me at that point. Our meals were always an adventure. I remember one time, Greg was dipping out this bowl of chicken soup, and he stopped and he said, "Hey, there's something in here." So Greg dipped in the spoon with one side and his chopsticks with the other side, and he lifted up this whole intact dead chicken with its head still on, its wings outstretched, and it looked like it was in some kind of a death scream. And Doris, one of the teachers with us, she let out with a "oh my," and so Greg put it back in, and we just kind of dipped from the top. We would have eggs that weren't necessarily from a chicken. We would often have meat that was kind of unidentifiable. But eventually, we got to like most of what we were eating. had 16 students, and my students were Chinese high school English teachers. So some of them spoke English better than the others, and their job for the summer was to learn American style English from an American English teacher. So I was given much higher status than what I deserved, but they were just wonderful students, wonderful people. I love them very much. My favorite part was when we would go for walks in the afternoon after classes and on weekends, because you could really kind of talk then. In China, you're never more alone than when you're in the large crowds. We learned that watermelon was a relatively safe thing to eat so long as you washed the outside with boiled water before carving into it. So we would go out onto the streets and we would go to the street vendors, and often we would haggle for watermelon. There was no such thing as minding your own business in China. If we started to haggle with the street vendor, all kinds of people would come up, and some of them would take the street vendor's side, some of them would take my side, and it was kind of a team negotiation. My students were almost always with me, and they were always on my side. We would spend afternoons together walking and going to tea shops. Usually groups of 3 to 5 students would go with me and keep me company and guide me around, show me things. My students would often take me to tea shops, and the tea there was wonderful. They had a jasmine tea that was just to die for. Of course, it was always steeped in boiled water. I was doing pretty good. They would ask me if we drank a lot of tea in America. And I said, well, a lot of people drink more coffee than tea. Though tea is kind of popular, but most Americans drink more coffee than tea. None of my students had much money, and I always felt bad because they always wanted to buy me gifts of food or snacks and tea, and I knew that it was hard for them. One Sunday afternoon, my students, I think 5 of them, were taking me for a walk, and we were just enjoying the day, but I kind of knew something was up. They were talking to each other in Chinese, and usually they didn't do that when I was around. It was almost like they were in some kind of a plot. Sure enough, it was a plot. They were taking me out to buy me a cup of coffee, a special gift for the American. And of course, I felt guilty because here they were scraping together their their meager resources to do something nice for me. And I had so much back home in comparison with what they had. But it was important to them. So I just went inside the coffee shop and thanked them, and we waited for the lady to serve us our cup of coffee. A few minutes later, the hostess brought this beautiful porcelain cup with coffee. My students had only bought one cup because it's pretty much all they could afford. And the hostess set it right in front of me, and all the students looked with just anticipation at the smile on my face. But truth be told, the smile was a bit of a lie. You see, in China, they drink coffee much like they do in Europe. It's iced. And the ice cube that was floating right there in the middle of the cup of coffee was kind of yellowish with little specks of something in it. It looked like it had been recently just fished out of the river. Then I remembered what I'd heard at the orientation. It's not a matter of if, but when. And I thought, now is when. As my students sat there looking wide-eyed in anticipation, I thought to myself, maybe if I accidentally dropped the cup. But no, I couldn't do that. I wondered, well, could I just kind of put it to my lips and pretend to drink? But no, they're gonna watch me drink every drop. Maybe if I just drink it really fast, nothing will happen. Yeah, right. You know, in the end, there was only one thing I could do. It wasn't my will. I wrapped both hands around that cup of coffee, and with a smile on my face, I put that cup of coffee, that cup of corruption, I put it to my lips, and I took a big gulp. It was exactly what they needed. And I drank the whole cup. I drank all of it because I really loved those students.